get started tonight with, a continuation of our analysis of the Haggadah. We started on Shabbat. We didn't get too far. We're going to start where we kind of left off, which was from the Magid, from the Halachmania. So we'll revisit those questions that we questioned, and we will hopefully answer those tonight. So if you have your Haggadahs out, you can look inside. I will read the English, and then we'll ask our questions. So the Haggadah starts, or the Magid starts. It says, Halachmania, that this is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt, that all who are hungry come and eat, that all who are in need come and celebrate Passover with us. Now we are here in the year to come. May we be in the land of Israel. Now we are here enslaved. In the year to come, we may be in the land of Israel, free people. So we asked a bunch of questions on this that was seemingly not to, didn't make sense with this, especially since we're opening up the Magid, we're opening up the whole introduction to the night with this kind of song, with this dirge. And we have to kind of question it. And so the first question is that we said that it says that our ancestors ate it inside in the land of Egypt. And we asked, hold on, wait a second. I thought the whole idea of matzah, the whole idea of this bread of affliction was that we ate it on the way out of Egypt. The sages told us that they did not have enough time to go ahead and bake their matzot. So what did they do? They put it on their backs and started going out. You have to understand that this went against the Jewish mother's nature to now go out and not pack food that you're going to go on a trip. You know, usually nowadays you tell a Jewish mother to go on a trip to Florida or New York. We're not talking about a desert. We're talking about places where there's food. And you have to pack at least 2 suitcases full of food just in case, just in case you get stuck. And so we're talking about 600,000 people. They're getting out. And what are the Jewish women doing? They're leaving even without snacks. They're putting the matzot on their back. They put on these unleavened bread on their back and started cooking it, baking it that way, just because Hashem told them that it was time to get out. And yet over here in this piyut, in the beginning of the Magid, we're saying that they ate it in Egypt. Okay, that was our first question. And then we started inviting people over to our house. And we said, this is also very interesting. Why? Because usually when you invite someone over, when do you do it? You usually do it a couple days before, a week before. You don't do it, let's say the worst case scenario, you do it at synagogue, right, before you go home. Not now that you're sitting down. You already started the Seder. You're already halfway through the Seder. Not even maybe not halfway, but you already did 1 cup. You ate. You washed your hands without a blessing. You did a kapas, and so and now you think it's a good idea to invite people. Should have done that a couple days ago, maybe even a couple hours ago. But to do that now at the Seder seems awfully late, if you ask me. And then we say hashtahacha. Now we are here. As opposed to what? As opposed to somewhere else. And then it says, Lashana haba ba'arad Yisrael. And it says, next year we'll be in Israel. Hold on, what if you're living in Israel? Do you also say this? If someone's living in Israel, do they also say the same knowledge? Do they also say this same terminology that this year I'm here, but next year I'll be in Israel? But aren't they in Israel? So what's happening there? And then we go back and we say it again. Hashtacha avdei. Now we are enslaved. Again, we're enslaved. I thought the whole purpose of the night is representative of our freedom, not our servitude. Next year we'll be in Israel and we will be free. So a lot of questions, and B'ezrat Hashem tonight we'll explore different aspects of this, and we'll try to glean a better understanding, especially of this part of the Haggadah. So our journey starts off in the Gemara in Masechet Psachim, in the tractate of Psachim. Over there, it says that there are 4 reasons why the matzah is called lechem oni bread of affliction. So the first answer is actually not anything to do with the affliction aspect. It says that lechem oni, because it's made pretty sparsely, meaning it doesn't have too many ingredients. It has only water and flour. And so there's no honey, no oil, no wine, nothing else mixed in with it. There are some opinions that say that even salt you shouldn't add to the mixture. So only strictly water and dough and flour. And so that's pretty poor, right? Oni literally means poor. And so when we're saying lechem oni, it means that it's a poor bread, meaning it's poor in ingredients. It only has water and flour. Now, the Gemara goes on, and it says actually, it's called lechem oni because it's lechem she'onin alav dvarim harbe. It's bread that actually has a third ingredient. It has water, it has flour, and it has dvarim harbe, lots of talking. In fact, the whole reason of this section of the Magid is to imbue the matzot with the third ingredient, which is the speaking, the speech of the Exodus of Egypt. Meaning the whole point of the Magid is not just to give over the story to our children, but also to complete the matzot, because the matzot have a third ingredient, which is the speaking over. When you speak over words of praises of Hashem and you're reading the Haggadah, you're actually spicing up, you're giving over some of those ingredients into the matzot. And that's what the Gemara says. It's called lechem oni, not because oni means poor, rather onim alav dvarim harbe, that it's you say a lot of words over it, you speak over it. Another answer is lechem oni, as it means actually, meaning a poor man's bread, meaning ma'ani bepursa af kan. So just as a poor man, he eats his bread in portions, he breaks it off and he eats it, so too with the matzot, we break it off. We did yachatz right before this, we broke the matzah, and so now too over here we are breaking off our bread and we're making ourselves kind of like a poor man. Another answer to why it's called lechem oni, again with that similar idea that it's a poor man's bread, the Gemara relates that it's just like a man lights his oven and his wife bakes quickly, so too the process of making the matzah is that you have to bake it quickly. Meaning a poor man, he doesn't have so much fuel in his oven in order to bake these matzot. So what does he have to do? He has to make sure that the dough and everything is in process. So by the time they light the oven and it gets hot enough, they can already put the dough in. And so the man is lighting the oven while the wife is quickly kneading the dough, and then quickly they put it in and it doesn't even have time to rise. So those are the four reasons, at least the Gemara brings down. Again, lechem oni, that the simple understanding is that it's a poor in its constitution, meaning it only has two ingredients, it only has flour and water. Lechem she'onin alav dvarim harbe, that it's bread that actually has a third ingredient, that it is dealing with the speaking aspect, that the bread has to come as a course after talking, meaning the whole purpose of the Magid is to imbue the speaking into the lechem oni, into the matzot. Then we had two reasons why it was a poor man's bread. One is that a person eats a little bit of it. He eats a pursa, he eats a portion of it, and so too we eat a portion of it, meaning we only eat in portions. And we said also that a man lights the oven while his wife bakes quickly. And on those levels, we had four answers. And B'ezrat Hashem, now we'll try to understand these a little bit deeper. So on a deeper level, when we're saying halachmania, right, and we said that we're eating it specifically in Egypt, well, this makes sense in the sense that if you're telling me that it's a poor man's bread, right, it's understandable why they were eating it in Egypt, because the Egyptians, they didn't want to give the Jews food that they will first of all need to keep supplying them with more food. So they were trying to find the most efficient way to feed them. Now, the most efficient way to feed them was actually matzot, because matzah, if you give it to a person, it stays in their stomach. It takes a long time to digest. And so a person will be satiated for a long time. And the Egyptians realized that this was the perfect way of feeding the Jewish people so that they could get the most work out of them without always having to resupply and restock them with more food. So when we're saying that we were in Egypt, that's true. We actually ate matzot before we even left Egypt, while we were still slaves, and that's why we're calling it the bread of poverty, the bread of a poor man. It's the bread of a poor man that we ate in Egypt. And when we were still slaves in Egypt, we were eating that. Now, we have to realize that when the Gemara is bringing these four explanations, they are not necessarily meant to conflict with each other. They're not meant to contradict one another. In fact, they're supposed to complement one another. So on one side, we said that lechem oni is a poor man's bread. But then on the other side, we said that it's also a bread that we talk about, that we speak to it, that it has dvarim arbe, that you have to speak a lot about it and converse about it. Meaning the whole magid, again, is supposed to be that third ingredient. And we said that a poor man, how does he eat his lechem, his food? He eats it in portions. So we said, so too here, he's eating it in portions. So how do we reconcile these two ideas? How do we reconcile it's both a poor man's bread in that he eats it in portions, but also it's a bread that we have to speak a lot about it? So there was a rabbi called Rabbi Shabtai Sabato. He's a rabbi in Israel, and he explains the Gemara very interestingly. He says, you can say darko shel ani beprusa, darko could mean that's his way, but it could also mean that's his life. Meaning not only the way he eats is in portions, but he also lives in portions. What does that mean? So for just an example, if give a poor person, you see a poor person at synagogue, and you look to him and he's destitute, right? So he's coming and he's asking for food, money, asking for food. He's starving. And you tell him, don't worry, I don't have any money on me, I don't have any food on me, but tomorrow you and I, we're going to go to China, I'm going to rent a store and we're going to sell there a lot of products for profit, we're going to become millionaires overnight. So what normally a person would be like, okay, that's great. But this poor man, what is he going to say? He's going to say, China tomorrow, I don't care about tomorrow, I care about today. If I don't get food today, I'm not going to be able to go to tomorrow. So I don't care about the China of tomorrow. I need food today. My refrigerator is empty. My family is pressing. If I don't come home today with food, my troubles today are more important than my futures of tomorrow. Meaning, a poor man, he's like someone in prison, right? If you go to someone in prison and you tell him, listen, I know there's a stock that's going to go up it's going to be very up. Do you want me to invest $100 for $1,000 for you? We can be millionaires. What is the guy in prison going to say? He's going to say, who cares about the stock market? Get me out of prison first. I don't care about the stock market. I don't care about wealth. What is wealth if I'm still in jail? So too the ani. The ani, he can't hear the entire story. Darko shel ani beprusa. He's living in portions. Not just his eating is not only in portions, but his entire life is in portions because he can't think about the future. He can't think about what tomorrow is going to give. Why? Because his problems of today are more pressing. He's more bogged down by the problems that he has in the present, and he cannot look forward. He cannot look in the future. He cannot see the full picture because he's so burdened down with the problems of today. And that's what makes an ani, and then he's stuck in that cycle. Now the Jews were stuck in that cycle in Egypt. You see, when Moshe Rabbeinu Hashem revealed to Moshe at the Sneh, at the burning bush, and he told Moshe, you're going to go now and you're going to redeem all the Jewish people. So he actually gave him 3 commandments. He told them, tell the Jewish people 3 things. 1, pakod pakadati etchem, that I, Hashem, I remembered the Jewish people. Ve'et asui lachem b'mitzrayim, and the suffering and the inui and what was done to you in Egypt. And then Hashem told Moshe to tell them, that I will bring you to a place, a land flowing with milk and honey. So he said 3 things. He said to the Jewish people 3 things. I'm going to tell you to tell the Jewish people 3 things. Go ahead and do it. And Moshe went. He related it all to them. And what is the response of the Jewish people? They said, they believed. They believed Moshe Rabbeinu. They knew that what he was saying was true. That Hashem remembered them. And that Hashem saw their suffering in Egypt. And that's it. So what did they hear? They didn't hear the full story. Right? They only heard the first 2. They only heard that Hashem remembered them and that they were suffering in Egypt. But they did not hear the point, the future, that Hashem will take them to the land filled with milk and honey. They were prisons in Egypt. So what did they hear? Get me out. I don't care about the land filled with milk and honey. I care about just getting out of Egypt. So they didn't even hear, they didn't process the idea of getting out of Egypt. So if that's the case, we can explain that later on in Parshat Vayera, when Moshe Rabbeinu told the Jewish people that he will free them, he's mentioned 4 languages of redemption, and that's why we have the 4 cups. Ve'etzeti, ve'otzeti, ve'etzalti, ve'galti, ve'lakachti. But there's actually a 5th, right? There's a 5th lashon. There's a 5th language of redemption. Ve'eveti etchem el eretz Yisrael, el haaretz, and that I will return to you. I will bring you to Eretz Yisrael. Everyone will get a piece of real estate. Everyone will be able to settle. There will be a land filled with milk and honey, and that's the blessing of prosperity. And what happened? What does the pasuk say? Velo shamu el Moshe. They didn't hear Moshe. Why? Why didn't they hear? Mikotze ruach me'avoda kasha. They were oppressed. They were poor, right? And they could not hear the whole story. Why? Because darko shel ani beprusa. The way of the man, the way of the poor person, is he's not going to hear the full story. He's always going to hear half the story because he's not settled. He's unsettled all the time, always trying to survive. So the Haggadah is based on 4 psukim in the Parshat Kitavo. Over there, it talks about the Bikurim. And over there, it says, V'anita v'amarta, that you will say and you will speak. Meaning that these 4 psukim go on to tell us, beginning with Arami oved avi ve'ered mitzrayma ve'agor sham, that we related that our fathers were in Egypt, they were in hardships, and Hashem took us out. And then it concludes with the words, Ve'yivenu el makom hazeh ve'yiten lanu et haaretz hazot eretz vat chalav dvash. Oh, now we see suddenly in Parshat Kitavo that when the Jewish people were bringing their bikurim, their first fruits, that suddenly they remembered that which Moshe Rabbeinu said in Egypt. They suddenly remembered that Hashem was going to bring them to a place filled with milk and honey. What happened? Why now do they remember that? Because now they're settled. Now when they're in Israel, they're no longer poor people. They are able to be settled and they can see the full picture. Well, at that point, they can understand and realize that was the goal. The goal wasn't to leave Egypt. The goal was to get to Israel. Yes, leaving Egypt was the first point, the first part of the process to get to Israel, but the whole goal, the whole point was to get to Israel. And so at that point, once retroactively they were settled, they could see the whole picture. So on this day, on Pesach, when we're here and we're calling it Lechem Oni, it's not because it's not only because the bread itself is of poor nature, Rather, it's because we are poor. We are the ones that can't hear. We're the ones that are serving. We are in servitude towards the yetzer hara, to our evil inclination, and we don't see the whole picture. Someone who is unable, someone who is a slave, someone who's in prison, as we mentioned, cannot see the entire picture. Us, as Jewish people, when we are being enslaved by the yetzer hara, being enslaved to our desires, by our physicality, well, we aren't able to see the whole picture. We aren't able to see what is behind this physical world. We aren't able to see Hashem's greatness in all of his grandeur because we are stuck in this physicality. So how do we go ahead? How do we break this? And how do we see beyond? So the Gemara tells us, well, there's another aspect to matzah, and that's lechem she'onim alav dvarim harbeh. That you have to talk and you have to speak on this bread. Meaning, what are we speaking about tonight? We're speaking about the grandeur of Hashem. We're speaking about the miracles that Hashem does for us. And it was not only in a past sense, but as the Rambam says, each person has to envision and feel as if he himself is leaving Egypt in the present. And so the whole point of the night is that we ourselves are stuck in Egypt and we ourselves have to get out. We ourselves have to, through the reading of the Haggadah, through the Magid, we have to go ahead and be able to connect and eliminate any of those doubts of Hashem in our brains and see the full picture and not get bogged down. That's why the Rabbi say Pesach, which means to skip, right? Passover, but it also means, you can split it up to Peh means mouth, and Sach means speak, that the mouth speaks. Because in Egypt, when Moshe Rabbeinu told us that he will be taking us into Eretz Yisrael, it went over our heads, it passed us. That was the first Passover. And so how do we fix that? So on the Leila Seder, on Pesach, we have to Pesach, we have to make the mouth speak. And we are able to talk about everything that happened. We can converse. And now we are able to hear the full story because now we are a little bit more freed than we were. So too, when we go through the night and we're able to recognize Hashem's hand in our lives, we're able to do the tikkun, we are able to rectify that aspect of the Pesach, of our lips, being able to go ahead and process and speak about all of the wonders, all of the miracles that Hashem does in our lives, reconnecting us to Hashem, and through that we're able to go ahead and recognize and see the full picture. And so with that, we can understand now why it says specifically Lechem Oni, because we're saying the first order of business of the night is to recognize what's the purpose of Magid, what's the purpose of reading the Haggadah, what's the purpose of Leila Seder, is to reestablish, to recognize Hashem's role in our lives, to view the whole picture, and that has to be specifically the Lechem Oni, this poor man's bread. The Matzah, it says that a person who understands the idea of the Matzah, and in fact, the first Matzah, when it came out of Egypt, it had already the taste of the man, the bread that fell from the sky, the bread that was eaten by the angels. The first matzah actually tasted like a man. And just as the man was a pure food, meaning that it had no bad qualities in it, usually a food, if it has psolet, it has impurities to it, well, the food, the good parts stay in the body, and the impurities, the bad parts, leave the body. Now this food, this man that they ate, was so pure that there were no impurities in it, and therefore there was no aspect of it that was put to waste, meaning it was completely absorbed into the body and there was no waste that left a person after eating it. The idea is that when you eat, there's a certain aspect of the food, as they say in English, you are what you eat. And just as matzah is clean, not only the ingredients are clean, but also it's clean, it has no yetzer hara in it, it has no impurities in it. And so if someone is able to go ahead and eat the matzah, you become what you eat. And so too, you will be able to rid yourself of the yetzer hara. Again, we're able to see that full view of Hashem. Generally, we know that also eating too much leads to sin. But if someone has a purpose, if someone is able to eat, as the pasuk says, tzaddik ochel lesova nafsho, that a tzaddik, he eats only to fill himself to satiation, meaning that he only takes and eats the bare minimum in order to fill himself, then he's able to work Hashem more because he's chasing Hashem more than he's chasing those feelings for food. And therefore, the matzah is called lechem oni, because just as a poor person doesn't chase fancy foods and he doesn't chase the yummiest food, he just needs food, so too, the matzah is supposed to bring us to that recognition that we should be eating for the sake of Hashem and not for the sake of our bodies. So that's the opening line, the lechem halachmania. Now they say, why are we specifically saying halachmania, this bread, as if we're pointing to it, and saying that don't think, as we mentioned earlier, that as we mentioned on Shabbat actually, that when was the first time that first of all, why is this in Aramit? Why is this in a different language? This isn't in Hebrew. This isn't Lashon HaKodesh. Why suddenly, when we're opening the Magid, we start saying it in a different language? Now, there is an opinion that is brought down by one of the sages, and he says that the reason that the Magid, the Hagaon Rabbi Yedid Tia, he said that the reason why the halachmaniya opens up in Aramaic instead of Hebrew is because the angels and also the Sitra Acha, the bad forces, they don't speak Aramaic. They don't speak Aramaic, so therefore they wouldn't understand what you're saying. Now, in this, what we're saying here is we're saying all of these poor people, you can come eat. Now, when you're saying poor people, you could also be talking about these evil forces, that these evil forces can come and dine, right? You don't want them to come, though. When you're saying poor people, you only want the actual poor people. And so what we're saying is we want to say it in a language that those poor people will understand, but these evil forces will not understand. And so therefore we say it in Aramaic in order so that that these other forces don't come. Also, we said angels don't understand Aramaic because the night isn't for angels to come. It's for exclusively Hashem and the Jewish people. And so only Hashem understands Aramaic as opposed to the angels and these evil forces. And so only Hashem makes his way to the Seder of each person. But as we mentioned on Shabbat, that the Seder, right, the main staple of Pesach during the times of until really the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash was the Paschal Lamb. The lamb was the main staple of Pesach. That when you were thinking Pesach, what were you thinking? That on the 14th of Nisan, you come with your group of people and you slaughter the lamb, you make a big barbecue, and that night you get to eat it. And that was the main staple. What came with it was the matzah, the maror. But if you're saying Pesach, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? Oh, the barbecues. And so the first time that we found that the Pesach was not the main staple was at the advent of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. At that point, there was no longer a Beit HaMikdash, there was no longer a temple that they could go ahead and sacrifice their lambs. So what did they have to make instead of as their main staple? The lechem oni, the matzah. And so when we're opening this matzah, or this dialogue, this magid? How are we saying it? This matzah, meaning the matzah right now, how it is because we're in exile. It's because there's no temple. But Bezrat Hashem, when there is a temple, then we will be able to have it just as an addition to the Pesach. And right now we just have it as the main staple. And then we said, why specifically on Pesach are we suddenly inviting all of these guests, right? And we should be inviting guests every week. And in fact, every Yom Tov, every holiday, we have a mitzvah to invite people. In fact, on Sukkot, for example, we have special guests that come every night, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and then so on and so on. And so, why specifically on Pesach is there a call for inviting? So, and if you're going to tell me that we're inviting people, then why so late? Right? So, one answer is that what is the whole purpose of the night, in addition to, of course, seeing Hashem, seeing the whole grand picture, seeing the full picture, and connecting ourselves to Hashem? It's also to connect our children to Hashem. The whole purpose of the night is supposed to be in a question and answer a dialogue. It's supposed to be question and answer, questioning and answering. And who is supposed to be the one questioning? It's supposed to be the children. Of course, if there are no children, you still have to go through the question and dialogue. But the idea being that the whole purpose of the night is to go ahead and teach lessons to our children. And what is the number one lesson in Judaism is that we always have to worry about others before we worry about ourselves. And of course, you have to worry about yourselves, right? Especially if your life is on the line. But what we're saying is that others are also important. And so before we even start eating and we start saying the Seder, we start inviting people, even though you're right, no one's coming, and no one's on their way. And if you invited people, you probably invited them a couple of weeks before. So now that you're saying it, and you're saying, "Hey, all these poor people come eat with us," who is it for? It's for the children. It's for the children to say, "Oh, look at my parents." That even before we start eating, they're worried about other people, to make sure that other people have what they need. So the point of that is at least to hand over that lesson to our children. Now, as we mentioned, that this language is because of this whole beginning is because it was at the advent of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Now, there's another thing we need to know about at the times of the Beit HaMikdash, when they would bring the Pesach offerings, you actually had to have a list. You wouldn't be able to bring it alone. No one can bring a Pesach alone. You would have to be in a group. Usually the group is a family. Now you have to make sure that if you're a part of that family, you're written down and you're on the list. Now each person has to make sure that they're on a list of a certain family, so they can eat from the Korban Pesach, from the Pesach offering, which means that in order for a person to eat from a specific person's Korban Pesach, they had to already be on the list. On this night, and once the temple was destroyed, and there's no longer a Beit HaMikdash, there's no longer a requirement for people to be written on that list and having to come as a group. And instead, we say, listen, now that we're in exile, everyone who doesn't have a place to be, you can eat at our house. Why? Because there's no longer a requirement to be on a list, to be in a group, to be in a family. So now anyone who needs a place to stay and a place to eat, they can come. The sages say that we also start off the whole purpose of Pesach, right? We say that just as in the past we were redeemed in Nisan, we will eventually be redeemed in Nisan again. And our sages said that through the mitzvah, through the midah, the character trait of chesed, of kindness, we will be redeemed. And so we're starting off the night with chesed and trying to show Hashem, listen, we're ready for the redemption, and what we need now is just a little bit more chesed, in order for us to get out of here, to get out of this exile and become redeemed. And that's why at the end, it actually has two languages of redemption. It says, Hashta'acha, right? We are here now, and then Hashta'acha avde, that we're here now, and we're also in servitude, as we mentioned. That Hashta'acha, meaning that when we were in Egypt, we were physically in Egypt, and Hashta'acha avde, that now we are slaves, meaning although we left Egypt, Egypt is still in us. Meaning although we became physically free, well, the Yetzer Hara didn't leave us, and so spiritually we are still in servitude. As the Pirkei Avot, it says, who's called Bnei Chorin, who is called free people? Only those who learn Torah. At that point, they've destroyed their Yetzer Hara, and at that point, they're able to get out of that vicious cycle. Now, other sages say that it says two languages of redemption of Lashana Haba Da'ara Yisrael, that next year will be in Israel, and Lashana Haba Ba'ara Yisrael B'nei Chorin, that next year will be in Israel as free slaves, to teach that there is two opinions in the Gemara. When is the final redemption going to happen? Is it going to happen in Tishrei, or is it going to happen in Nisan? So some say that Tishrei is going to be like what happened in Egypt, that just as in Tishrei in Egypt we stopped becoming slaves. At that point in Tishrei, the servitude stopped because of all the plagues that were being wrought down onto the Egyptians. And then there was only a full redemption in Nisan. Similarly, in the future redemption, there will be a stoppage of work. There will be some kind of partial redemption in Tishrei, and then a full redemption will happen in Nisan. Another sage, another Mefaresh brings down the Minchat Chen. He said that when a person is sick and they're in the depths of their sickness, they don't feel any pain. In the sense that they're so caught up with the sickness that they're so weak that they don't feel anything. And then once they start recovering, then he feels his weakness and he feels these pains. Meaning, once one recovers, then he starts seeing how deep or how bad the situation was. And so when we're saying Lashana Haba Ba'arad Yisrael, the next year will be in Israel, meaning in the sense that next year we shall already begin to recognize how deep we were, how exiled we were from Israel. And then, as we get closer to fully being recovered, then we come to that aspect of Lashana Haba Yisrael, Bnei Chorin, that we're able to come to Israel as free people. We end off the Halachmania in Hebrew, and the Rashi, he brings down he says that this last part is a tefillah. The last part of the Haggadah of the Halachmania is actually a tefillah. It says Lashana Haba Ba'arad Yisrael Bnei Chorin, and he said that if the last part is a tefillah, and a tefillah should be in Hebrew, then why is the first part in Aramaic? It says that the first part is in Aramaic, even though it also is a language of tefillah, that B'ezrat Hashem next year will be in Israel. He says that's not a tefillah, that's not a language, it's not idea. The idea is not for it to be coming as a tefillah, as a prayer. Rather, it's to instill within us emunah. It's made to instill within us faith. Because in order for a tefillah to work, you first have to have faith. You can't pray to a wall and expect the wall to do anything. You first have to put your faith into Hashem, and then you can pray to Hashem. And so Rashi brings down, he says that we start with Hashta Ba'arad Yisrael, that next year, Lashana Haba Ba'arad Yisrael, that isn't a prayer. That's emunah. It's to instill the person with faith that next year we will be in Israel. It should not be a doubt. It should be a fact that next year we'll be in Israel, and then once you have that perfect emunah in Hashem, then you say Lashana Haba ba'arad Yisrael b'nei chorin, that next year, Bezrat Hashem, we will be in Israel as free not only from this last exile, but from the Yetzer Hara. We'll be able to see the full picture, and then not only will we only be lechem oni she darko, that a poor man, his way of life is bepursa, that he only takes things in portions, but we're also able to understand that through the lechem she'onim alav dvarim harbe, that through the speaking of the night, through the recognition of Hashem, we will be able to instill within us that emunah, that next year, and B'ezrat Hashem before next year, in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to once again have the Pesach in Israel, in Jerusalem, and we can make those barbecues, and B'ezrat Hashem will be able to all go to the Beit HaMikdash and have those celebrations. Any questions?